Okay, I'll just do Google Chrome. That's probably the easiest. Great. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So today I'm going to walk through how you can build an application for Substack. So what this means is that you can provide a Substack article and then you get a ChatGPT like experience using Berri AI. So this is a Substack article that has a bunch of content. And the goal here being that we can create this platform for end users. Every time they write a Substack, they get this custom instance of ChatGPT for them. So let's walk through an example of how you can do this for a landing page. So we'll use the landing page to kind of prototype and see what exactly we're trying to build. So the first step here is I'm just gonna input this and then I'll enter a website URL. So I'm gonna use the landing page to play around with the prompt. So let's start with phase one being you are an AI assistant for answering questions from Substack blog posts. So very simple. I'm just gonna click on build application for this. And what this is doing is it's ingesting that input URL, and then let's ask it a question. So I'll ask it let's ask it to summarize this blog post. So summarize this blog post for me. So let's just test out if this is working fine or not. So it says this blog post is by Mehdi Yakubi, talks about managing and distributing logistics. Let's say, what are the main points about this? Cool. Azim, anything you want to change in the prompt, we could play around with it. Maybe we could make it fun and be like, talk like Yoda if you'd like to do that, or anything fun like that.
Saul Goodman.
Who's that?
Saul Goodman.
How do you spell it? Is it T-A-L-L?
I'm going to put that here. Saul.
Yeah.
S-A-U-L-G-O-O-D, man.
How do I see the chat? Oh, I see the chat there. There it is. Saul Goodman. Who is that? I'm not.
Oh, this is the lawyer character from the Breaking Bad, and he had a show.
Oh.
Better Call Saul.
Okay, interesting. Let's do that. So let's do answer all questions as Saul Goodman. So I'm just going to refresh this. We're currently working through the flow, but ideally you should be able to edit the prompt itself when you're here. Okay. So this is the new prompt, and then I'll enter my email again. So let's try asking a question. So let's say, summarize this blog post. I like the Saul Goodman, so I hope it works. You might have to tell me if it's actually talking like Saul Goodman or not. Encourages to manage their own distribution. It seems like I don't know. What do you think?
It's straight explanation. I don't see any Saul Goodman characteristics. Like, I mean, he's a witty attorney. Let's change. I mean, if you have something in your mind.
Yeah, let's try Yoda. Maybe it has some information about that. So answer all questions as Yoda. You are an AI assistant. Answer all questions as Yoda. And answer questions from the given Substack blog post. So we'll play around with this prompt again. And then Berri.ai. And then let's do the website URL. So let's click on build application. And let's see if it answers questions. So let's say, summarize this post. This post by Sam Altman emphasizes the importance of its own distribution. Doing so provides, I can see there's a difference in the answer, but I don't particularly see it specifically talking like Yoda. So it's a slight difference here, but let's try with GPT. Let's try text DaVinci. So we can play around with the model type.
Summarize the blog, maybe.
I can see it's talking like slightly differently. Like you see this post by Mehdi Yakubi, but we want it to be almost stronger, right? We want it to be like I want it to be more emphasized, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe let's be like, answer all questions as Yoda. Let's give it less complicated instructions. So generate the answer So generate the answer in the voice of Yoda.
Yeah.
For query string. So let's try one more time with this. If this gives us like better results, then we can move on to programmatically creating these. So let's say one more time. And then we'll do website, we'll do prompt here. And then the website URL we'll provide at this point. And we'll create build application. And then here's your website. Let's ask it again, summarize this post. In this post, Hamilton describes, he emphasizes, yeah, definitely can be improved. I think we want it to be almost like more strongly talking in the voice of Yoda.
Yeah.
So that's something, at least on my side, that I will investigate in. Because I do want it to actually, I want it to feel more like Yoda, right? This post by Mehdi to be, it's able to answer the questions effectively, but I feel like the prompt here needs to be further improved, or like the way we're handling the prompt on our side can also be improved. But for now, what I will move to is like creating these programmatically so we can actually create an app using this prompt.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'll spin up a replit and we can do a shared replit where we can pair program through this. So I will create one here. Oops. Let's do a Python application, and then let's do Substack Berri V1. So and then I'll invite you. Cool. I'll share this in the chat. Oops, it sent summarize this book. Generate join link. Okay, great. I was able to share that with you. Let me know if you're able to log into that replit.
Yep, I'm in.
Great. So what we'll do from there is, looking at my screen, we created this application here. So the next step is actually programmatically creating these, right? So we give you a curl command if you want to programmatically create it, and then you can actually click on the API docs to know exactly how you can do this, right?
Okay.
So there are two sections here. One of this is essentially creating your templates so that you can create these applications for yourself. So that's where you specify the prompt, and then you can create the application. So all you need to do is specify the data source there, and you can create the applications for this. So what we'll do is step one, I'm going to write down the steps that we need to go through. So step one is create template, where you specify the prompt itself, right? So over here, you specify the prompt that we are using. And then step two is create the app. When I say app, it's like you provide the data source, and then this creates the application for that. Create the app, provide the data source, and then get the application in return for this. So these are roughly the main two steps. And what we'd want to do is, through here, basically you call the create app and create template flow. Do you have any questions, by the way? Like,
no.
I can pause here. Okay,
no,
great.
I think I'm good. I'm following.
Yeah, cool. I mean, so what I can do is I can let you take the lead on this, like with the create template. Like this is our API doc, but
Sure.
I will send you the link to this. So goal here is to just call this endpoint. I'll send it in the chat.
All right, so I'm inside the link. So we're gonna pick up these boilerplate code.
Exactly, yeah. Create template.
And this is where we need to provide the data source.
So I will look at the replit itself. Yeah, so step one is actually creating this template. Let's move this here. And then what we could potentially try here is that we'll create this data field. And then what we'll do is we can specify data source in this field itself.
Okay.
So this would be the data here. This is through the sample that we give you. And what we can do is we don't actually need to specify the output length. Let's not put any constraints. Let's just keep it very simple for now. So I'm just gonna clean this up here. Advanced prompt. The legal and ethical. Actually, let me. So I will copy it one more time. It's getting pasted in a funny way. I just wish it was better formatted when I paste it. But I guess I gotta fix my own docs for this. Advanced. And then so what we'll do there, and then the intent, right? So let's remove, we don't need to search the search query for now. Like we'll just say we just do default search. So basically this is trying to say this is the intent that you're doing. And then what we had from step one is we had our prompt written out. So let's add that as a string there. So in step one, when we went through this for Yoda, we specified our prompt that gave us a sufficiently decent result. So what I'll do is I'll paste that into the replit that we have going here. So this is the prompt that we have given the context information and no prior answer. Generate the answer in the voice of Yoda for query string. And then we'll say you are answering questions from a Substack blog post. And what you can do is that when you're doing these, you can also dynamically set this. So when you're setting the prompt based on the author, what you could do is you can parse who the author is, and then you can say in the prompt itself, you are answering questions for Mehdi, or you are answering questions for this author. But that's an advanced stage. What do you do next?
Okay.
So let's, from here, you're doing advanced intent, and then let's go back to the API docs itself. So basically, this is an app config, right? The data that you're creating, this is this part here. And we can go in the section about app config. So an app configuration is basically, it allows you to specify how you want to build this application. What's your data source? Is it going to be a URL, or is it going to be a file config? So in the case of Substack, we're actually creating it for URL configs, right? So this is an example that we give you for the URL config. And what you can do here is you can see this field and you can specify intent to be QA website, right? So if you want to use this for answering over a website, that's the intent that we can set. So I'm going to go back here, look at the intent, and instead of QA doc, I'm going to make it QA website. Besides that, I want the prompt to be the prompt for using here, which is this variable that we've set. So what I'll do is I'll set this to be prompt. So basically, I'm able to create these applications now for this prompt, and I've set the intent to be QA website. And I think that's basically the first step, where we're just creating this template. So that gets stored on the Berri server once you do this. So let's run through this. Let's see if we can successfully create the template. So you can see it responds with a template ID. And this template then we can basically use for all the applications you create for next Substacks, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store this over here. So I'm going to say, this is my template ID, and this is a string that I have. So basically what this did is I had this prompt. So now any applications I create in the future, basically for any Substack, I can reuse this template itself. So this is my template ID. And then step two is like, let's use, step two is use this template to create new apps, right? So that's the second part of this. And we've kind of gone through creating templates. And now this part is actually creating the app, right? So if you look at this, when you create app, you pass a template ID, your user email. So as a developer, you would pass in your own user email, right? So what I'm doing here is a sample request here would be, I could enter my email, Ishaan@berri.ai. And then the template ID is what we have here. So this is BE22. Set that there. So we'll run through this example. And then the data source is what you specify. So you can enter a file or a website API URL. So let's test this out with this Substack that we had here. And let's see. So let's send a request. It says I'm missing my data source. So let's make sure that's working correctly. I'm just going to look at the sample I had here.
The Substack is the error.
It says that I'm missing the data source. I believe when we're doing this part here, yeah, exactly, that's the link. So I'm just going to verify, look at the documentation one more time and make sure we're doing this correctly. So when you create these applications, your intent prompt, input URL. Yeah, you simply just specify data source and then you put input URL, which I believe is what we're doing here. You're missing your data source. Let's look at the docs, enter file or website URL. That's weird. I was able to do it in Python.
So in the data source section below, you give PDF, zip, doc, text, or website URL. Will there be any difference between the first set of parameters versus the second set, the website versus the document?
Yeah, so there should basically, when you, let's look at our request here. So when you make this Python request, let's look at the example. So if you look at this example here, basically you would specify the data source at this point,
Okay.
and this is how you can do it for a file. And if you want to do it for an input URL, then you would specify it through there. So actually what I'll do is I'll copy this code here and I'll put this in the replit. So far we have the template ID.
Okay.
And what I'll do is we've imported requests, we've specified the template ID, and this is the next URL. So this is the endpoint for creating an application, right? And we have template ID. We'll set our own email. So I'll do Ishaan@berri.ai. And then this is kind of the data source section that we were talking about. So if you want to do this for a PDF or Word doc, basically you'd have this in this folder here, and then you could create it for that Word doc itself. And now what we're going to go through is an example of how to doing this through input URLs, right? So what we do is, I'm gonna get this piece of code here. Sorry, I lost track of the screen I'm sharing right now. Oh, there it is. So essentially we can specify our data source right here. So I'll add one more parameter here. So we'll say the data source that we have is the input URL that's being given. So let's hard code the input URL for now, make sure that this works.
I was going to say that, yeah, that's hard.
So let's hard code it for the Substack. And then I also want to fix the spacing. It looks kind of ugly right now. And then let's say this is the user email, Ishaan@Berri AI. And then, yeah, so this is the data source that we have, and we've hard coded it to be just this Substack. Let's remove files. So if you wanted to do this for a PDF file, you would pass it in like that. So, and now here we'll specify data equals data, which is the input URL included. So let's make sure, let's do a sanity test, and we've already created the template ID. So we don't actually need to run this section of the code now, right? Because we're able to create the template. So we have this template ID we got from the previous step, and let's run this. So goal here is to create the app for just one Substack. And let's see, this is the website endpoint that we've returned. So now we can test out if this was able to work correctly. So we'll ask it, what do you know? And yeah, let's just make sure it's working correctly. It's able to respond of the competitor. This actually responded in the Yoda way. It said, no, you do.
Oh, you do.
Yeah, that's, I guess it is kind of working now. Yeah. And then let's say, what are the main points in this article? My grammar, main points. So yeah, we were able to create this: be smart and work hard, be bold, willful, join us on Vital. So let's look at the article, make sure that there actually is something, right? So let's say leverage to build. this is the article. So let's just look at the word. There's the word leverager. Get this leverage. He does talk about compound yourself. You also want to be, we can ask another question. Let's just verify. How do I compound myself? Let's make sure that's working as expected. Compounding yourself, seek you must career move towards one with compounding effect, leverage, etc.
Nice.
Cool. So this is working for one Substack article. So the next step of this is actually making this an application, right? So my end users, then they can specify their Substack article, and then we can create this programmatically for them very easily. So let's go back.
There will be an input field. They simply put the Substack link there.
Exactly.
Ask
exactly. That's exactly what this would be. So what we can do is let's try, we have this template ID. So I'll keep this section of the code here. And what our goal can be is building a Flask app, right? So you can dynamically call this. So this is an endpoint, and then you can create a front end also for it. So all we need to do is anytime someone gives a data source, they should just be able to put an input URL for Substack. So honestly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask ChatGPT to convert this to a Flask app for me.
Yeah, let's do that.
Simplest way. So let's go to ChatGPT. Let's say, given this code, convert this to a Flask app. The default route should say, hello from my Flask app. And then it should accept input URL as one of the including. So let's have ChatGPT convert this.
Sweet.
Yeah, it does most of the hard work for me, making it easy to convert my working Python to a Flask app itself. Cool. So it looks like it's doing create app, it's accepting user email, and it's doing a data source. We can hard code user email. So let's go back here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Replic's fork functionality. So I'll just create a new fork just to keep this clean. So we have this Substack Berri B2. We'll make this public also. So we'll keep B1. And what I'll do is I will copy that code. I can also send you the invite in the chat that we have. So let's take this code here, paste what we have. We hard coded the template ID. And user email should just always be my email. So I'm creating this from my end users, right? So right now we can just use my email to create this. So we don't need to even look at this parameter. And then for this, let's call this input URL. And then here is also the input URL. And then this is the data source. So then this is calling the Berri API endpoint. So you can programmatically create these applications for you. And then we'll also look at, when we do this, we'll do print response.json.
Yep.
So this is basically every time you get the response, you can look at it, what you're getting.
What's getting.
Exactly. And let's see if this runs just on the Replit itself. I think what we want to do is Replit has a particular way for creating these applications.
Do we have to merge it?
We have to?
Do you have to merge it to the main branch?
Oh, I think I just created a new Replit.
New one?
So
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to look at the documentation here. Oh, yeah. So we want to use waitress. That's how Replit does this. So from waitress import serve. Yeah, so this should actually give us the web view and can give us a link also that we can look at. That's just a better way to use this and interact with it. It's a couple seconds just to load and everything.
So what you said, the waitress?
Yeah, so I'm using this and Replit has this. So basically you can see now, I can see hello from my Flask app and I can see a URL, right? So that's useful because then I can go to Postman and I can just call this endpoint for my application. So what I'll do is then I'll share my Postman screen to show how this is all working.
Sure.
Let's see if I can share Postman here. It's not letting me do that. Let me try one more time. Share screen, Postman, there it is. Great. So I'm going to go here, Berri Substack. This is the link we just created. And then the route for creating the app is called create app. So we'll post that in here. And then the parameter it's expecting is an input URL coming through the body. So this is input URL. And then we have Substack. So this is the create application. We put that from the replit. And then this is a Substack that I've already taken from. And now we'll try calling our endpoint on the replit itself. So I'm going to try calling the replit. And we should, let's look at the response that we're getting. So you can see we actually got a response already. And what I can do is on the replit, I'll add some print statements just to verify all of this is working correctly. So we'll do print input URL. And then the other part of this is we actually want to return response.json.
So you're sharing the Postman. So you're doing the edits in the, okay, I can see that from here.
Yeah. So I just made a small edit to the, and I'm just going to call this endpoint one more time. I wanted to return the website URL. So I'm calling the replit we built. And now you can see this is the website URL for this Substack. So I will show my screen one more time. So let's look at Google Chrome. And we just created this application for a different Substack. So this is the application we just created. Let's ask it, what do you know? So this is freshly created application. We just did this. Ownership, logistics, etc. Shorten your lead times, improve efficiency. So we can try this out for a different Substack too. Let's make sure it works. So let's do Substack. I'm going to look at my own inbox. I'm just going to pick a random Substack that I have here. So let's look at, yeah, I think Shamat has some interesting Substack. So we'll do it with Shamat's blog post. Not a lot of content actually, maybe not the best. So let's try it with this one. I want somewhere where you can actually ask it questions, right? Yeah. So this looks like a decent candidate. So what I'm going to do is, do you know if there's a way I can share my entire screen? Might be easier. So
yeah, you can, if you share screen and the first option you get is desktop 1 and desktop 2.
Desktop. Are you able to see now everything?
Yep, I can see
it. This is great. Yeah, so now this is my Postman and I'm looking at Postman. We've changed the URL. So let's go to the body parameters. And this is the new input URL for this blog post, which is this is, where we go? Yeah, it's this one, 9.4. It ends with 9.4. And we'll call the endpoint of the application that we've just created. And let's look at the website endpoint that we have. So it is able to respond to the request we got. And let's also look at the replit, make sure it actually did get the response. Yeah, there you can see it here. So you can see it got logged on a replit too. It got this request to make this URL. And what we'll do now is we'll ask it a question. So signers of this is, it looks like it's about crypto. So we can ask it, what is a DAO?
Yeah.
What is, so it should be able to answer it because it's created specifically for this input URL. A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So makes sense. And then we'll ask it to summarize this post. So just to get a summary of the entire blog post here. Change, the only constant is bankless DAO members embrace. Yeah, so it looks reasonable because it is about bankless DAO. This is the answer that I was expecting, and it's using ChatGPT to answer these questions. I can also select GPT-4 if I want these questions, or probably better responses. So I can actually go and summarize this post, and I can summarize those responses for this question. You can see there's a slight change here, right? Like based on what the model I'm using. So I can prototype and use whatever model I'd like. So that's basically how you can create a Flask app for this. And basically we went through the steps of calling the Berri create template. Once we created our template, then we are creating the application. And then if you want to further prototype with the prompts, you can basically change the prompt and create a new template. And you can do these. It's kind of this is the main meat of this. Yeah, then it's up to you. Like, do you want to also, we can create a front end, so it's a full stack application and go through that flow also.
I mean, this is, like you said, some meat of the application. I mean, whatever from a front end side, it's going to be bells and whistles to it, right? Like, I mean, the core logic is
exactly, yeah.
So obviously, if there are any Substacks which are behind the paywall, how would Substack? Let's just not talk about Substacks. Any other
Yeah.
Let's just say Wall Street Journal, and if it's behind the paywall, how would it read?
Yeah, so that is through OAuth, right? And basically we allow you to do that. If you want to OAuth in, let's look at create your application config. So if you look at URL config, yeah, so we allow you to enter your access token. So anything that's paywalled, you basically need to get your access token and you provide that to us and then we can read those, right? So if you're using API or using OAuth 2, then you just need to provide us with your access token and we can read that URL.
So you would have another text box, and then you let the API token and the OAuth token enter in that text box, and you read it behind.
Exactly. Yeah, so you can do that through OAuth too. So if you want to do this for New York Times, you can create it for that too. Yeah, and we allow you to do that too. So like once you created this application, right, you have an API endpoint. So even if someone wants to do this for other Substacks, you can give it a default prompt being like, for all requests coming in, always summarize the prompt. So by default, it also responds with that, not just the chat app.
Probably the fastest application deployment behind the scenes work that I've ever seen. So good work.
Yeah, I think there was some work needed when I went through this flow. I saw that the website, basically the prompt didn't work correct, but it worked well on the API. And the docs are slightly confusing for me when I went through it. So we do need to make improvements. I think it's, since it's just the two of us, like we're working pretty fast and trying to make sure that people can actually build on top of it.
Sure. So in the documentation page, in the create app page, I see template ID, user email, and data source, right? If I give my template ID, username, and data source, it would then get back me the response, correct?
Exactly. And it gives you the API endpoint. And we also give you a chat application if you want to use that. Okay. The web app that I demoed here.
Understood. Yeah, this is great, Ishaan. Thank you so much for walking me through and showing me how it's done. This is
thank you so much for taking the time.